many of you have said to me, for heaven's sake, please don't talk about Harry. Please don't give us any more guff about the Prince of Darkness or whatever he's now become. But it's very difficult not to do Prince Harry today because, for a start, on the front pages, Harry spills his secrets in devastating memoir. Please don't marry Camilla. UK monarchy facing its worst crisis for 30 years. Crisis for royal family as Harry says William attacked me. Oh, spare us. Front page of the Daily Mail. Front page of the Sun. Harry did coke and weed. Let's have a look at that one. I mean, it's very, very difficult to avoid this little nitwit, and that's what I'm going to call him. The prince formerly known as Herbert, who has now opened his heart, opened his wallet, opened his mouth, opened his mind, told us how many times he smoked dope, how many times he snorted cocaine, how he lost his virginity, you know, why he couldn't fight back against Prince William, even though he used to kill 25 members of the Taliban without even blinking in the desert in Helmand province. I just don't know really where to begin, but I just think that we should disown this boy, who is not a boy. He's nearly 40 years of age, after all. He's married to a woman who has completely ruined not only him, but the entire royal family. It's a bit like one bad apple in the barrel, which appears to be rotting the entire carcass of the royals. It's unbelievable what's going on. The royal family, I think, in my view, have to do something quite stern and quite soon before they disappear up their own backsides, because it's no longer good enough for King Charles to say nothing. It's no longer good enough for William to say nothing. I think it's time they cut this bloke off at the knees and said, thanks very much indeed. No more money, no more titles, no more welcome back to Britain. In fact, no more British passport. Just take it all away and let him sit in his own juices in Montecito. Good luck to him. Imagine waking up next to her every morning. Or in her case, imagine waking up next to him every day. Go, what are we going to do today, Harry? Who can we screw over? How much money can we make from your horror show? Unbelievable. I mean, what can you say about the Prince Harry situation that hasn't already been said? Well, I mean, let's face it, the highlights so far, if you want to call them that, on the papers this morning and sort of some of the stuff that came out yesterday, Prince Harry, how William and he begged Charles not to marry Camilla. That must make Camilla feel particularly special. He admitted to taking cocaine and mushrooms, saying drugs let him see the truth. He talks about having a conversation with a bin at one point. He talks about, as well, smoking quite a lot of weed, of course, as well. He says that the Princess of Wales demanded an apology from Meghan for saying she had a baby brain. He tries to talk about all the things that went on behind the scenes. It's pretty ridiculous, really, that he has decided to have this kind of brain dump on the rest of the world. Many people now looking at him thinking, rather than feeling sorry for him, rather angry with him, actually, because he's made so much of his own private life monetised, if you like. He's made money from his own difficulties, and he's made out that he's got this terrible life instead of actually being happy to live the life that he wanted to live, because he moved away from Britain, he moved to California, he's got 2 lovely children. I wonder what his children will make of all this when they finally grow up and realise that he and their mother spent their entire lives bitching and moaning about how awful everything was and how they were terribly hard done by. Let's have a look now at the latest clip from the ITV interview, which is going out on Sunday, before we speak to Angela Levin.
What was different here was this level of frustration. And, you know, I talk about the red mist that I had for so many years, and I saw this red mist in him. He wanted me to hit him back, but I chose not to.
There's a fair amount of drugs, marijuana, magic mushrooms, cocaine. I mean, that's going to surprise people.
But important to acknowledge. I want reconciliation, but first there needs to be some accountability. The truth, supposedly, at the moment has been there's only one side to this story, right? But there's 2 sides to every story.
Yeah, except there's only one side to the story at the moment, because the royal family simply are too classy, actually, to answer many of the things that he's accusing them of doing. Let's talk to Angela Levin, our favourite royal biographer. Angela, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's hard to imagine the mindset of somebody like Prince Harry at the moment, isn't it? Because it's embarrassing, it's kind of over the top, it's self-indulgent, it's all of those narcissistic things that you wouldn't want anyone that you knew to be telling you, right?
Yeah, quite right. I mean, you cringe at some of the things, absolutely cringe. I think it's a terrible intrusion on William to say that they were both circumcised. I mean, he wants to say that about himself, go ahead. But I mean, this is a private matter. He doesn't have to do that. This is the guy who absolutely loved privacy and thought it was very important. He's also the guy who kept saying that it's very important to show compassion to those you know and those you don't know.
Yes.
There's nil compassion in that book.
No.
And what's interesting is that the ghostwriter obviously had an eye that everything was going to be seen through a dark screen. You can turn everything to be a negative, but Harry surely read it through and said, I'm not having this. This is not quite like this. This is not true. I found so many untruths, and one of them, very quickly, when he was single, he lived in Nottingham Cottage, in just a tiny place next to the palace. And when Meghan came early, she wanted to live with him, understandably. And she said at the engagement interview, they loved it because it was cozy and they could just be very close. But then when they went for tea to William and Catherine, they were absolutely shocked at the lavish place they had, 20 bedrooms and all that, where they had this tiny little cottage. And the fact is that they decided to stay there while £2 million was spent on renovating another sort of area of the palace for them. They then changed their mind, the palace having spent their money, and decided not to stay there and go to Windsor instead. Now, that wasn't a case of depriving them. Harry goes on that they had to buy, cheap lights and the furniture and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's a load of nonsense. They were there in a temporary.
But also embarrassing because, there are genuinely people this morning wondering whether they've got enough money to get through the weekend, wondering how they're going to get to see their, sick relatives because there are no trains going anywhere, and they have to read this guff from this overprivileged, indulgent man who is no longer a boy, let's face it, who is now, a grown man, a father of two. I said earlier, what must his children be thinking? I mean, when these children grow up, what will they think he was doing?
I agree with that. If they ever get to see you, to read that book, the respect that they should have for a father will absolutely go down the drain. I mean, it's an appalling admission of spite and nastiness and betrayal. So all the things that they've been pumping up, how good they are and how important it is to do well, will just have no effect whatsoever. And also the children, of course, don't know that grandparents and their relationships on their father's side, and all they speak to on their mother's side is Meghan's mother, Doria. So the whole thing, I think it's all been blown up in this book, and I think he will come to regret it. I think it's self-destruction, highest order, because what's he going to gain out of that? Most people.
Well, money, I guess.
America, yeah, but obviously money doesn't mean anything to him because he's still miserable. If he was happy, if money made him happy, good luck. But unless it is that he still feels that Meghan isn't happy with £20 million and she wants even more, that would make him unhappy. But otherwise, he should be very happy. 16 bathrooms, it's amazing. Lots of land. We saw that on the Netflix series, but it's just that he's destroying himself, really. He's also discouraging anyone to go and see a therapist because he obviously hasn't been helped in any way.
Well, he's exhibiting to me, when I first went to America in the 1980s, he's exhibiting to me what an awful lot of people in New York exhibited, which was that going to see a therapist was a narcissistic exercise, and what it meant was that as soon as you met somebody in a bar who you'd never met before, they'd tell you their life story, the first time they had sex, what their favourite colour was, and you're kind of going, sorry, I didn't really ask you about any of that. I don't really want to know about any of that. Thanks very much indeed. You go over there and keep it to yourself. It's a very un-British way to go about life, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Harry has told us how he had sex when he was 17 outside in the garden.
Ghastly, and also written like some kind of poor Mills and Boon novel,
Yes, well, it is written in a way that is really unpleasant to read, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's shocking. And it's all going to bounce back against him because I don't think there's many people who actually, as you say, there's a lot of people who are struggling at the moment, and he expects sympathy. And also he's so snooty because was asked whether he would be going to the coronation. He said, "Oh, the ball's in their field. You know, they've got to give me the answers to the questions I want, you know." I mean, who does he think he is? He's nobody.
Exactly right. And I mean, you've written about Camilla extensively, Angela. You know Camilla. What do you think she's making of all of this? Particularly the line in the Telegraph today that, you know, he begged his father not to marry her.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of children whose parents separate or one of them dies don't want their parent to marry again. I think it does take a while. That's one of the things which I actually sympathise just slightly. But what is a lie is that Harry says that she had a plan to deal with the media to get Charles to marry her. Well, that's not true. She spent a lot of time, months and months, alone at home, where the paparazzi and the journalists were banging on the door and shouting. If she had a plan, she wouldn't need to do that. She's not that type of woman. She's very forgiving, and she does believe that things will pass. We've seen that in her whole lifetime since she's known Charles and her relationship with the Queen, which ended up to be extremely good. I mean, Harry does mention that he felt that she was very nice with Charles and that it did help him. But that's about the only positive thing I could find so far. Yeah. I think she would feel that her role at the moment is to help her husband. I mean, for the king, it's absolutely horrendous to have a child to turn his back on you like that, and actually to say that he had no way of showing emotion. He did. I mean, Harry himself told me what happened when he was given the news of his mother's death. And it was that Charles, you know, had hung onto William, and William was crying in his arms. And then he went to Harry and they stayed with him and tried to be calm. Charles doesn't want to cry then. He wants to be the father, not to let all his emotions fall. And then they all hold hands, the three of them, to go and see the Queen, Elizabeth and Prince Philip, who were waiting to see them. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't hard, he wasn't cold. I mean, this was a terrible shock. Harry, I'm sure, can't imagine it correctly because at 11, you don't have that sort of memory when you have a terrible shock. But he just wants to be nasty about everyone. Everybody's nasty, everybody's wrong. Nobody treats them right. Meghan is perfect, beyond perfect. Diana talks to her through her.
Oh, God.
You know, that weirdness going on.
Unbelievable.
And that they are never wrong. They never do. You know, their controversy and saying one thing one week that he wants to have a father again, he wants to have a brother, the next week as being terribly insulting. So it's all nonsense. I mean, I think people would just say, "Oh God, I can't bear this," and move on. I'm sure the royal family, Camilla and the king, are working hard on what they've got to do, and just not reading the book, not reading the papers, and just carrying on, because that's their role.
Yeah. That's all they can do. Well, listen, Angela, great to talk to you. I know you're very busy at the moment. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you soon, I'm sure.